The new Lloydminster Nissan is moving. We'll be temporarily relocating to the Big Blue Building on Highway 16 West, formerly known as Border City RV. And before we have to tediously move every single vehicle on the lot, we'd rather sell it. You can save today on our incredible Nissan lineup of cars, trucks, and SUVs. Move a new or pre-owned vehicle to your driveway with deep discounts. The moving out sale is on now at the new Lloydminster Nissan. The new Lloydminster Nissan. We won't sell you a car, we'll help you buy one.
Local people. Local news and events. Local sports. Local matters. For all things Lloydminster area, this is Live with Kurt Price.
Hey, welcome to Titus Tools. My name is Kurt Price, of course, and welcome to Patchwork. Today's edition of Live with Kurt Price is a Patchwork edition where we talk Canadian oil and gas and our love for Canadian oil and gas.
And our love for each other.
I'm here on behalf, of course, the new Lloydminster Nissan, where at the new Lloydminster Nissan, the moving sale continues, and we are really ramping up to move. So the pressure is really on us to move out those vehicles before we have to move them all. So if you're looking for a new car, truck, or SUV, right now is the time to get into the new Lloydminster Nissan. Not only can you save yourself some dollars, but at the new Lloydminster Nissan right now, do not pay for 6 months OAC. We are moving to the Big Blue Building on Highway 16 West that was formerly known as Border City RV. And the great thing about that is every day is going to be an indoor sale because there's enough room in that building. We can park every vehicle on our lot inside.
Wow, that's interesting. Because normally you go down to the X grounds and do it all there, and now you can just...
Every day.
You probably got as many cars as some of the other car collectors in town do now, right?
You might have more. You never know. Might have more. Lee Noble is our guest from Viro Rentals. So great to see you, Lee. Thanks for giving us some of your time. It's appreciated.
Thanks for having me on.
Another one of our big supporters, of course, is BioClean Disaster Services. BioClean Disaster Services is a local company who is committed to you and your family. Now, damage from wind, fire, and flood, it takes a hard toll on you. It takes a hard toll on your family. Believe me, I know. The stress levels are going to increase. The tension is going to increase. The last thing you need is more of it. BioClean Disaster Services realizes that, and the disruption is enough for absolutely anyone to put up with, so they don't want to give you any more of that stress. They're going to act as quickly as possible, and they're going to take care of your home or your business or your possessions, but they also understand that getting your family back to where they were before the disaster and getting rid of that stress and that tension is so important. Plus, when you deal with BioClean Disaster Services, it's important to deal with a local company. I've always believed that, and BioClean Disaster Services is local. 1-833-246-8326. All right, our guest today is Lee Noble, of course, but just before we do that, Tracy, the oil prices are confusing right now.
Well, they're medium rare at best.
Yeah, what's going on?
Well, some of these guys, we're going to talk about that a little bit on the show. We're going to let Lee chime in on some of the stuff as well. We were down at the Texas show, which was where I met Lee, and he had his Viro Rentals display down there, and I was saying, hey man, we should have you on the show. So we had to go to Texas
to get it all
to
together.
get Lee on the show, who lives in Lloydminster. It's a pretty good story.
Well, it's funny you say that because Brian Zinchuk messaged me one night, and he said, or he called me one night actually, and he said, you know the guy you should have on your show, and you have to wait till he gets back from Texas, is Lee Noble. So Brian with Pipeline Online was like, yeah, grab Lee and get him on, but he's down in Texas right now. So
yeah, I knew that.
When you pay for services, people will vouch for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So that makes him even a higher profile guy to have on the show, right? Because he was in Texas and he's a traveling guy and he's doing all of this stuff. But no.
A worldly man.
Yes, it could have. It just worked out really great. I've known Lee for a long time. And Lee, just to let you know, we're always looking for guests on the show. And then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, I said to Kurt, we should have you on the show after we'd seen what you were doing. And you're a good speaker. You're very much involved in the community and that, and we said, hey, let's get this guy on the show. You want to hear the prices next?
I do. Lee's also a no-nonsense guy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, he's like, TK, you're talking too
Yeah,
much.
you guys
now.
have got to get going here.
Yeah.
Okay, what are those?
So as back to the prices as we were talking, even though Texas, and it's kind of a lead into that, because Texas is the benchmark of the oil prices, the Western Texas Intermediate. West Texas Intermediate is the benchmark. It's kind of like the US dollar around the world. And right now it's at $75.11 US. And the Western Canadian Select this morning, Kurt, from the oil price website, some use the BOE report and they find that more accurate. I use the oil price one, but it's still telling you our differential's got to giddy up here. And the Western Canadian Select this morning's at $49.92, just a hair under 50 US. I always like the US on the end because that's like 5 million Canadian. No, it's not. But it just means that we're getting a better value for a dollar right now. So you're still looking at a $25 US differential. Lee and I were just talking before he came on the show. That's got to get narrower. And the narrower it is that we follow around when the prices are better, then our oil is at a better price. And we got to get that gap back together. So demand is good. There's lots of stuff going on. I think, we say this all the time, the electrifying situation is losing steam all the time. People are getting further away from that. Lots of those cars are getting shut down and replaced, in my opinion. We're still seeing that fossil fuels are alive and well and are going to be used more than anything out there. And we're going to be here for a long time on those prices. So they're going to come up. There's real talk from all kinds of different organizations out there. We'll have Adam Waterman and Zinchuk on another show to talk about that trend and the carbon tax. That's really not really anything. But to make a long story short, prices are going to get, I believe, are going to get even greater here by December.
What about rigs? What are we looking at for rig count?
I haven't got the rig count today, but I know that the activity is getting better on that as well. And that's just the anticipation of what's going on out there. I had lunch with a large corporation here this week. They're kind of hovering, but yet there's lots of other companies out there that are saying that we've got some real strong drilling programs based on what's going out there. And, we got to get some people on here. Adam could definitely, Adam Water could definitely talk about. We need to do a show on multilateral because it's really the flavor of this area right now. And basically, a multilateral is drilling a well with about 8 or 9 octopus legs on the end of it out into the formation. Okay. That's the easy way of saying it.
It's funny you bring up the electrified thing because I don't know if you saw the report this morning, but basically the Canadian government doesn't believe their own reports because the Canadian government is supposed to be switching their vehicles over to electric. They're 77% off their mark of where they want to be going forward with switching over electric vehicles for the Canadian government. So if the Canadian government doesn't believe their own bullshit, how are we supposed to believe it?
Right.
To be blunt, to be as blunt as Lee
Yeah.
would probably be. We'll take a break. When we come back, we're going to get into Lee Noble's story.
At Lloydminster and District Co-op, membership matters more. Because being part of a co-op means you're connected to something bigger than yourself. From long-held legacy by those who built our communities, to people you call family, friends, and neighbors. When you're a Lloyd Co-op member, you're an owner in a local business that prides itself on purpose alongside profit. You earn cash back, you help support causes that matter most, and you're building a better way of life for the next generation. Membership matters more.
I'm Brian Zinchuk of PipelineOnline.ca. I used to be a pipeliner, and I've spent the last 15 years reporting on energy in Saskatchewan. PipelineOnline.ca provides comprehensive coverage of light oil, heavy oil, lithium, helium, power production including coal, wind, solar, geothermal, natural gas, and nuclear. There's a lot happening in Saskatchewan's energy sector, and Pipeline Online is there for all of it. No one else comes even close.
It's more than just taxes at L&A CPA. Assurance, accounting, retirement planning, estate planning, business consulting, financial consulting, farm program support, and bookkeeping. But yes, there is always taxes. The team at L&A CPA is committed to helping you achieve your best results and will be there to assist you every step of the way. L&A CPA, with offices in Provost, Vermilion, and Lloydminster.
Welcome back. We're at Titus Tools today. I'm Kurt Price with the new Lloydminster Nissan. We want to remind you about one of our great supporters, Superior Water. Superior Water has 2 locations in Lloydminster, and they're open on Sundays to make filling your big blue jugs a whole lot quicker and a whole lot easier. And if you want great tasting water right from your tap, you can call Superior Water and ask about their under-the-sink reverse osmosis systems. 780-875-6636. I drink Superior Water because I like the taste. I believe it is Superior Water. Superior Water, open on 57th Avenue, Monday to Friday, 8 to 6, Saturdays and Sundays, 10 to 5. Plus, of course, they have a coin-operated location beside 7-Eleven on Highway 17 South. Lee Noble from Viro Rentals. I almost said Viro Tank.
That's close.
But that's the product.
Yeah, that's
the product. But we're going to get into Lee's story here. And what we want to know, Lee, starting off is, I posted last night on Facebook that you're coming on the show. There's a lot of people got excited about hearing your story and saying there's a local guy, there's a guy that's made everybody from around here real proud. Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Hillmont, Saskatchewan, on a farm about 7 miles east, right on top of the North Saskatchewan River, and about 3.5 miles from the Husky Tank Flags Battery. So when you asked earlier about if I grew up around the oil field, that's what we had. We farmed around wells. I snagged lots of anchors with cultivators and whatever else. I was a never-ending deal of fixing stuff for my father when I was out in the field. So yeah, we had a lot of oil around us and on land that we either rented or farmed in pasture land. So in the early 90s, I'd have been 15, 16, 17 years old, not far off this size really. I was probably 6'2", 6'3" back then. So it was easy for me to jump in the tractor and go pull trucks for Dad, and no one really asked how old this kid was. I just showed up and drug trucks up hills and in the mud. So I've been doing something in the oil field since I was a young man, and then spent about 3 or 4 years working for High West Well Servicing here in Lloydminster, a long time service rig company.
Because he's seen this guy, 6'2", he's automatically certified to go and be a roughneck on a rig because
exactly,
you go, hey, good farm boy. Yeah. Back in our time, even back in the 70s, guys like Lee around, hey, oh, I'm working on a farm. Hey, you want to make some real money?
Yeah, exactly.
Come work on the rigs, right?
Yeah. My back tells me that I carried too many of your pack-off heads instead of using the picker truck.
Well, one of the things we hear all the time is that story, Tracy. Like, that's become very, very familiar to us. Is I was on a farm, now I'm in the oil field. The two are related, aren't they?
It's the work ethic. It's the work ethic for us. We've had more, and saying this nicely, we've had more guys come through here that were probably on the farm from Marwayne, Kitscoty, all these areas that knew how to work. They knew how to get up. They were diligent already. And if they're working for their parents and now they're working for somebody else, it just seems like it's just a crossover to say, hey, I can do this. So, even in the rig situation, you could get on a rig because you were good, strong, had common sense, you had good mechanical mindset by the time you got off the farm and all this, and you're making good money. It was an easy transition for guys that saying, hey, I'm on the farm, I'm helping my dad or my parents are doing what I'm doing, but I can maybe make some even better money doing this. And that, some of the, no disrespect to the parents, but they probably lost some of their kids to the oil industry because of the money too.
Yeah,
right?
You never wanted to take over the family farm?
We didn't have the land base that made it so that you could take it over. Grandpa was fairly young still, and Dad was farming, so it didn't really make sense. You have to make your own way. Like, you can't. We didn't have the. I didn't want to go out and buy a whole bunch of land. I went to work, and it was in a time I went to college to be a farmer, but I realized then that you have to. I would have to work off the farm to make the farm work. In the 90s, we were droughted out. It wasn't very much fun. BSE, all of those types of things. I always owned cattle on the farm, but worked off the farm to sublet it. So at some point, you have to make the decision what are you going to be pot committed to? And if I'm living in town and trying to work on the farm, it was a lot of work. So eventually it was just focus on, I went back to school after working for Ed for those years. That's where I actually met Tracy, was when I was in the Hoot course at the Lakeland College. I don't know if they still call it that anymore. I'm dating myself, but would have been 97, 98, would have met. I sat on the student body for the OTS.
Right.
There was the OTS student body, and myself and
Holy
Trevor
smokes.
Yerke were
Yeah,
the first.
that-
We were co-presidents, because at that time there was a A and B class, and I think there were 64 of us in total, so classes of 32. So Trevor was nominated for his, and I was nominated out of mine, and we got to go have coffee with you monthly throughout the school year with you and Cedric, and there was a whole bunch of guys that eventually, when I got into the oil field, I'd either already worked with Cedric because of Petrovira and working on the rigs.
Petrovira, you don't hear that name as much anymore.
Exactly.
Petrovira.
Yeah. You go through all the guys that kind of influenced the direction the guy wanted to go. I knew that if you working on the rigs was awesome, but if I was to buy a house or do those things, I was going to be on the rigs for my whole life. Not that that's a bad thing, but that wasn't really what I wanted, right? I thought I wanted to be an operator. I thought I wanted to drive around in circles and check wells for my lifetime, but I kind of I was enticed into the service side quite early. The feeling of being able to go out and talk to people and do what you do and sell things, that kind of excited me, probably from the farming thing.
You were a leader though too back then.
Yeah.
You being chosen as your group, and I, boy oh boy, I didn't realize I'd known you that long.
Yeah.
More over than half your life I've known you.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were a leader back then.
Well, maybe just the guy that was the most full of shit at the time.
No,
So
I don't.
I'd worked on the rigs, so they
You had some knowledge, but
Yeah.
you also had because of your positioning there and them picking you, you were a leader back then. And honestly, you probably working for somebody was going to be your startup. But you see people like that and say, you know what, this guy's probably going to end up doing something on his own. And you were definitely one of those guys.
It took me a long time. Like you guys asked about what my experience was in the jobs that I have. Well, like I said, I worked on the rigs, went back to school, operated for, at that time, Wascana, worked for a chemical company, worked for Husky Energy, and all the while knowing that it didn't feel right for me. Had a bit of a time in the pipeline industry as well, working construction, had, looking after 75, 80, 90 men type of thing. Once again, I was good at it and had fun, but it wasn't for me. Then we owned our own construction company. My wife and I partnered with some local people. It's called Top Grade Construction now. Back then it was Top Notch. Same thing.
Top Grade Construction. They're not a little company.
No, not now. We were small back then. We only had about
big.
26 pieces, but Garth and Jody have really grown that.
That's a big company now.
Yeah, and once I stepped away from it and said, look, Garth, you're good on your own. You can do this. They took off and they got after it. So Garth and his dad, they've done a really good job of that over the years.
And very successful.
I just want to go back here, Lee. So you graduate high school.
Yeah.
And at that point, you go to Lakeland College. Or
I went to Lakeland College first for, I would say, basket weaving 101, farming. It was called livestock major. It was mostly, I think I owned a quarter interest in the Landmark Tavern by the time I was done school there, but they didn't give me it.
Okay.
But yeah, so it was just a way for the farm boys to get out of home and go mess around, right?
So then you go into the oil field.
Then I went back to the oil field. I'd worked
That's
as a
when
kid.
you went on the rigs?
Yeah, I worked on the rigs a little bit as a kid in the summertime. For High West, just because I was the farm kid that was a local guy, and Ed really liked the Hillmont flavor. There was probably 10 or 11 of us from the Hillmont area that worked with Ed at High West.
So you're in high school and you're working on the rigs.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, you got to have a story.
No, I won't out anybody.
No.
The rides to and from work were interesting. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, but like you're still working rigs, and then you decide to go to Lakeland College. So was the farm boy blood still in you that was trying to push away the oil side? Because we know we're going to get into the rest of the story, but you're the farm guy, and you're going to college to go So what was like going? What was college like? What was that all about then?
Well, college was good. It was a way to meet. It's funny, even in the agricultural side, the people that I met there are now out in the oil field, and there's people from Consort area. There's people from Saskatoon that came here, and now they're working in the oil and gas sector down in Regina for the government.
There's farms close to every oil well out there,
all the time.
so that's always going to cross.
It's always going to cross over, and really, it was a segue. It was just another thing in life that you learn. That I learned that I was probably more suited for sales coming out of that college than I was for, working for somebody else or whatever else, right? And selling your own thing, getting to that point, that was kind of the
So what topics were you taking? What were you, when you came out of college, what do you think you were going to end up?
When I was done at college, I was thinking that I was going to work off the farm, continue to farm, and then possibly someday take it over, right? But like I said, our land base was small. There was just not my dad's still on the farm now. He's only 72 or 3, so I'd still be waiting, right? Yeah. So at some point you have to, like I said, make that decision between what you're going to do. So
that's when you started.
Yeah,
doing some pipeline, doing some operating,
kind of feeling my way through I always liked construction, and I always liked building things, taking it down and then reconstructing it. That goes to the farming background. You have to fix your own stuff. You can't afford to, right? So you got to do your own thing, and that's what we did. We welded, built trailers, built cattle trailers for neighbors, fixed people's stuff all the time. I don't know how many car hauler trailers we built in the time through our farm shop, bale feeders, all that kind of stuff, right? So you come from the farm kind of talented, and that's why.
You're a candidate.
But you don't even know. So you're a candidate to go to work for somebody that that has a shop like this. Come here and help machine out things. You could probably learn how to run a lathe without going to school because you've done it, right? It's kind of cool that it gives you the background to be able to go into whatever vocation.
You know what we call it? What I've called it many times on the show. You actually ended up coming off the farm, and the oil patch loves you because you have a degree in common senseology. Yep. And then you can take that degree anywhere, and the farm is a perfect place to get that degree at.
On the rigs, it only took 8 or 9 months, and I was on a brake handle somewhere because you were at that time. Well, if you remember at that time in 94, 5, 6, it was flat out, right? Yeah. And so it was just guilty by association. Yeah. If you thought you could grab onto it and go, and they thought that you could run it without hurting anybody, they were going to put some time and effort into it, and they did, and it was good.
Well, the other part, it was 1998, actually. I was out on a rig, and spring breakup, and so spring breakup, all the roughnecks and the derrick hands usually go on unemployment insurance, and the operators, which are the guys running the brake handle or the tool pushers looking after the rig, they go on a rig if they can still get around in the spring breakup weather.
Rig crew,
right, and there was 100 years of experience on one rig I went out to run tools on. Yeah. And nowadays, and it's just the transition in timing in that. You get a guy like Lee who's got all that experience, and then you put him on a rig. He's just like he's been around a tractor. A rig, you could say, is possibly like a glorified tractor with a derrick on it. He knows hydraulics. He knows all this stuff. Well, guys like that see that, and right away he's going to go from a roughneck to now, hey, this roughneck actually knows more about the rig than some of the guys do. Now he's a derrick hand, and the next thing you know, he's running the rig.
That's
because
because
of all of his mechanical skills and knowledge on the rig, he's going to go there.
So Lee, you're making pretty good money on the rig.
Yeah, I was working for Nelson Lumber at, I think, if I remember correctly, $7.45 an hour. So I was driving from the farm into Lloyd to go to work each day in a 1984 Chevy 4x4. I don't know how much gas I would have burnt back then, but it was lots. And
it didn't matter back then.
It didn't matter, right? It was cheap. Yeah. But I think the first day I started on the floor, I was $16.75 an hour. So
holy smokes, you're over 2.5 times your
exactly. Yeah. So that I feel for Nelson Lumbers and the Beaver Lumber and those guys that are trying to keep people in building homes that we need to live in. Yeah. The oil field stole a lot of people, and I mean, it wasn't a life for everybody. Lots of guys stayed doing the other thing, and they lived within their means, and they made a good living out of working at Nelson and places like that.
Because you're home every night. Like
Yeah.
there's certain styles, and
Exactly.
you can elaborate on that a little bit, Lee. Because I worked the rigs for many years. That's my background. You're not home all.
No.
You're away from home all the time.
Hard lifestyle.
You know, kids' track and field meet. You know, school presentations, whatever it is. You might miss a lot of those because you're making good money. You're working in town and doing work, and you might not be making as good of money, but you're home every
Yeah, the
night, and
quality
you
of
might.
life is definitely different.
It's a different
Yeah.
style.
And I guess that's, now I'm at that point in life where we talk about farming. Well, my business partner is Jack Bench.
Yeah.
And his family and my family go way back. Like, before I even knew who Jack Bench was and he knew who Lee Noble was, our families worked together. Like, I mean, my dad hauled cattle for his dad and his uncle. They had purebred Charolais, we had purebred Simmentals. They were importing cattle, a lot of AI and that kind of stuff in the background. So I'm kind of coming full circle because I helped.
By the way, let's stop right there.
Yeah.
You said AI. Just for the record.
Yeah,
We're not
artificial
talking
insemination.
yeah, artificial insemination. not artificial intelligence back then, because you say AI now, and I'm teasing. I was like, I got to put that line in there. AI now is like artificial intelligence. He's talking about artificial inseminating the cattle so they can make some calves.
I'm talking about a shitty arm. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I mean, now I'm back to where I'm actually helping Jack a little bit on his farm when he needs a hand. I don't do all the labor work that I used to.
But benches and cattle are pretty well associated.
100%, and so are nobles really in this
Nobles too,
area.
yeah.
Nobles too. There's the Black Gold family. They have a massive, they big sales, big heifer sale, big bull sale. They do a great job of it, and that's where I grew up working too. The work ethic comes from our farm and their farm. I spent a lot of time working there, and probably ended up in the chemical industry because of Randy Noble and Brent Dallin and Blaine.
Well,
Holland,
that leads into
right?
this, because it says we got here, well, you went to work out of college, but what did your job entail? And I know you for most of your life as a chemical guy,
Yeah.
or a lot of your stuff in
Yeah.
chemicals.
Yeah.
So you work the rigs,
Yep.
you're on the brake handle, so how did you transition from getting off the brake handle into chemical sales?
Took
From the Nobles?
Yeah, took the heavy oil course at college, got my
Right.
4th class power engineering.
Okay, that couldn't have been an easy decision. To go back.
No, well, I was lucky that we had, that you had worked a little bit. I had a girlfriend that looked after me at the time. She's my wife now, that, I could live with while I went back to school.
Yeah.
It was an okay transition for me. It wasn't like it was a stop life and it's over type thing to go back to school.
How old were you?
I would have been 20, I was 97, 20, about 23, I guess, or 20.
So 23, so your gal she's got your back, and she's saying, go do, like that
Well,
says something
she had
too.
the same idea that if we were going to stay together and I worked the rigs and bought a house, she wasn't going to see me for the rest of my life, right? Like, I would have to work
She's a good lady.
hard, right, to do
Yeah.
it. So it was go back to school and get it done, right? And from there got a job with Nexon, Wascana prior to that.
Prior to that, Sask Oil.
They just changed their name. It was actually, I think at that time it was Wascana, then it was Canoxy, then it was Nexon, and now
Okay,
it's Strathmore and all over
whereabouts were you?
Plover Lake. So I
Okay,
was
so that
at-
was Canoxy.
Yeah, exactly. So I was at Plover Lake. I started at a heavy oil facility it was a steam flood.
Who was your
our-
foreman out there at that time?
Back then it would have been Ron Birdsall.
Yeah.
Another fellow named Keith Coleman. I took a guy's job named Regan Knorr. He moved into the facility side. Regan still works here in town for Synovus. So
Wow.
I mean, the amount of people that I've met over the years that are still decent acquaintances and good guys in the oil field. When we were young, we always talked about those damn old guys. They got that old man's club, the old boys club. Well, now here I'm sitting here and my hair is gray and I'm looking around and I'm kind of falling into that. Yeah. My club has turned into the old boys club, and now there's the guys younger than me swearing, oh, they got it easy because everybody just gives them everything. Well, you got to kind of work for it. It took some time it's like farming. You plant the seeds and then all of a sudden it comes back.
So
later.
were you driving back and forth to Plover to do your shifts, or what were
No,
you
I
doing?
lived in Kerrobert for 3
Oh, you
years.
did?
We bought a
Okay.
house down there, yeah.
So you got your hoot, your heavy oil, and then you went over there. So somehow you were working with chemical.
Yeah,
so
the guys,
you had to have been working with chemical there.
When I talk about Randy and Blaine and Brent and those guys that worked at Champion, they were smart enough not to hire me. I actually went to work for their competitor, Nalco. Exactly. So I was working for Nalco at that time so many names have gone through all these different companies, and now Champion and Nalco are all together under Champion X.
Which their shop for years was right next door to ours.
Right next door, yeah, just down. So I spent probably better part of 3 years doing that. Had a baby coming along, 12,000 kilometers a month chasing after that. That was a hard life too to stick into. That Champion, or having Champion as a competitor and being the only salesperson in my area, it was hard to fend them all off. So you put a lot of time in to get it.
You're
done.
saying something there, 10 to 12,000 kilometers a month.
Yeah.
So guys you don't even hear that saying. I used to tell guys, because back then you had to do 5K. So you're doing 2 oil changes a month.
Yep.
Back then you were doing 5K every oil change.
Yep.
I said, I used to put 2 oil changes a month on my truck. That's
like,
10K a
right.
month.
Yeah. My sales area went from CNRL North Tangle Flags to Hughenden, all the way east back to Plover Lake where I'd started. We were actually selling the chemical there as well. And then, all the way back up here to Lloyd. So, so many properties and so much production to try and keep up with and cover. It was a lot of work, and Nalco at that time was focusing more on water chemistries than they were oil and gas, because they weren't having much luck beating into the Baker and Champion areas in these heavy oil areas.
Right.
So they kind of lost a little bit of focus then at that time, and with the way it was, there just wasn't a very good guarantee that we were going to get much more help. So I made the decision to go back to work for Husky, to work here, and my daughter was born like 2-3 days later after I started at Husky. Actually, my first day I was supposed to start, she was born, because I didn't make it to work on my first day.
You know what? That's okay.
It is okay. Yeah. So it was kind of cool. Worked there for a few years, and then that's when I segued into the pipeline world. So I've kind of always been I was battery operator at both places. That's where I work. So
You're working with chemical all the time then.
100%, and process and just that stuff. So I was always the guy that would crawl around through the treater when the door was off. When we were doing turnaround, I wanted to be the guy that was looking after the crews and making sure that everything was done, going through that process. That's what we had to do our own at Husky. It was always that way. So it seemed like I was always where I was getting my hands dirty and my nose in the shit. I didn't want to sit back and just do the normal 9-to-5 job, driving around in circles, checking the wells. I always had to have something that was a little more, not challenging, but just maybe exciting, something different, right? Pipelining did give me that. That was interesting, learning how to work with people, learning how to work with, the sales process to sell in Calgary. I'm a kind of guy that'll go out and, run a skid steer beside the guys and jump in my truck and drive to Calgary and go talk to the president of the company. That was essentially my function when I worked.
There's a talent to that, because it's like most guys, and I was in sales for years as well, and you kind of go through some of that stuff where they go, okay, this guy's just out here selling for us. Oh, just a minute, you guys need me to push a little dirt over there and move that thing for you? Just a second. You go, okay,
I wasn't very good at pushing the dirt, but I could run the equipment.
What I meant by is that they just think people don't know anything. They have no mechanical skills. They don't have anything as salespeople, and then you're out there. And one thing I used to do all the time when I was putting that many K on, I literally took my lunch with me all the time, because
100%.
you couldn't get to Provost or Macklin or anything to get into lunches and stuff sometimes. I just take it, and my lunch hours were spent in the batteries, sitting talking with the guys.
That's correct.
And that meant more to me, and you got to know the guys a lot better, because they can't go for an hour and a half to Provost and have lunch and come back with you. So we did most of our stuff at the batteries. So
I don't know how you stayed so trim, because it didn't treat me very good to get stuck in the truck.
You're still pretty good. You got into the chemical side, and then all of us somewhere down the line, for at least some of our stories is that you're working for people, and then you just say, you know what, you probably went home to your wife, which I did, and said, hey, you know what? I think we can do some of this stuff by ourselves.
Yeah.
How did that chemical
Well,
side lead into the Viro tank stuff? How did
I
that
think
happen?
just learning from all the people that I had worked with along the way, and then taking a stab at owning the construction company and working with that and learning that process of looking after the books. My wife has always been, she's been a bank account manager her whole career. She hasn't changed. She stays solid. That's what she's been. And that's why I guess I get to live the life of changing and trying to find the right way. And since 2012, when I stumbled onto the Viro tank, it was at its inception. It wasn't patented yet. There was a company down in the Neilburg area called JTL Industries that was manufacturing the tanks and they were building tanks for Foremost at that time. And then Les had invented this tank. And I come in about a couple of months after he had started it, and essentially got it set up so that it would work in heavy oil. Took it under my wing and started going to Calgary selling this thing. Got into places where, in the Kindersley area, where we were continually moving tanks behind the drilling rig, and these crews were going in, setting up 400-barrel tanks, containments to produce a well to, until they had control of that well. In the Kindersley area, they're artesian wells for the first.
Tell us what artesian wells for.
Well, they're free flowing. They have enough downhole pressure that the product comes up. So they would actually produce their oil with no mechanical means. It was just free flowing.
No artificial lifting.
They actually had to throw a choke mechanism in to hold it back so they could control. Otherwise, they were wildcat wells. They were coming in hard, right? So for us, as I'm seeing this, I'm talking with little companies like Beaumont. They're not even alive anymore. Whitecap gobbled them up. Tyne Energy come into the. That's another Canadian government faux pas that we'll talk about in a while. It's not a faux pas. It's a good thing. The CPP actually owns 89% of Tyne Energy. So, and people don't know that. But so the CPP actually does go to do some good in our area, but they don't brag about it, right?
Yeah.
So outside of that, our customers kind of drove what we needed to do. Some of them, the smaller companies were like, well, we could try these tanks, but I don't want to buy 12 of them and then have them not work the way that they're supposed to. So that's where the rental company was spawned from. Jack and Lester decided to start the company, and I headed it up. Lester was getting a little bit of pressure from some of the manufacturers or other guys that had bought tanks as well, that now we're setting a used price, setting a new price, and we're setting the rental rate. And there was guys that had a couple, 3 or 4 of them that were renting out at that time as well. So Jack and I bought it solely off of Lester. Another character named Doug Wilson was a partner of ours for a few years as well.
Doug Wilson from Lloydminster?
Yeah. Him
Doug
and I.
Wilson from the registries?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Doug
Hey, learned
was
something
in
today.
as well. A couple years ago, we bought Doug out. He wanted to go on to some other ventures in real estate side of the world where he was more comfortable. So we ushered that in, and the last couple of years has been tight for Jack and I. Up until that, it's been really good. We've rolled along. Those guys down in the Kindersley area, when they're drilling 300-400 wells a year as a company, and they've got. I never thought that I would be able to make a rental company with a company that had bought 35 of the tanks already, and they were still renting 25, 28 of our tanks as well. So they essentially had their own. They were the largest user of the Viro tank in existence, right?
Wow.
So yeah, it's been really good. We've been lucky that we have a product that once people get their hands on it, kind of sells itself. They don't really come back. They go and they just stay. So we're lucky that we have decent clients that look after us well.
Nice. Nice stuff.
We've got a lot more questions for Lee. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we're going to find out more about what Lee is currently doing. Okay, this product sells itself. So what does Lee do all day?
At Jason Arden Associates Cooperators, we're proud to be a top-rated local insurance company that offers flexible solutions and expert advice for all your insurance and investment needs. We'll work with you to tailor your insurance specific to your needs, and we offer investment advice that always puts you first. At Cooperators, one of our core values is to support the communities we live in. When you support Jason Arden and Associates Cooperators, you are supporting local nonprofits and initiatives. Since 2020, we have donated $60,000 to local nonprofits, youth sponsorships, and various special projects. When was the last time your insurance company did that?
How can you help support the oil and gas industry and jobs in Western Canada? The answer is closer than you think. Sell your scrap metals to PWM Steel. PWM sells scrap iron to Evraz, located in Regina. Evraz's #1 customer is the energy sector, building pipes and plates for the oil and gas industry. PWM Steel is your locally owned metal recycler and steel service center in the area. Plus, they're a strong supporter of the community. PWM Steel, your top steel supplier for Alberta and Saskatchewan for 40 years.
At Diamond 7 Meats, we work with local farm families to provide a high-quality product and a great selection for you. Try our mouth-watering smokies, pulled pork, roast beef, and more, made pure and natural with no additives or fillers. We offer custom processing, and our experienced team works for you to provide a selection of sausage, burgers, and jerkies made to your specifications. Take your grilling to the next level with a Yoder smoker. Complete the grilling experience with Canadian-made, award-winning line of House of Q barbecue sauces. We're locally owned and operated, and we look forward to seeing you today.
The new Lloydminster Nissan is moving. We'll be temporarily relocating to the Big Blue Building on Highway 16 West, formerly known as Border City RV. And before we have to tediously move every single vehicle on the lot, we'd rather sell it. You can save today on our incredible Nissan lineup of cars, trucks, and SUVs. Move a new or pre-owned vehicle to your driveway with deep discounts. The moving out sale is on now at the new Lloydminster Nissan. The new Lloydminster Nissan. We won't sell you a car, we'll help you buy one.
Welcome back. We're at Titus Tools today. I'm Kurt Price with the new Lloydminster Nissan. Tracy Kay, of course. I don't even think I introduced you, Tracy.
Hey, well, guess what else you forgot to do? This is our first time live at the Titus Tools show.
Well, I did say we're at Titus Tools.
You did, but you didn't tell them it was the first time we've ever been live here at the Titus Tools shop. You know, if you want to continue to use this, I'll rent the space to you for live for Kurt Price. It's a really good price. By the way, I apologize on live air too. Hey, Lee, that is probably one of the nicest poppies I've ever seen. That looks like beadwork of some kind.
It is, yeah. A good friend of mine owns General Fence. We'll give him a plug.
Oh, yeah, Jody Copser?
Yeah, Jody Copser.
He's a good buddy of yours?
Yeah, his mom, Mame, she's like a second mom since my mom passed away, and so she made
Come on, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's cool. So
that's
awesome.
It's definitely way nicer than Kurt's.
Oh yeah, you guys hit Mame up on Facebook around this time. She's usually selling these things.
That is, and that's one you can.
Well, there's no shortage of poppies around our house, believe me.
No.
We're stepping on them all year.
Yeah.
They basically fall out of Heather Clagus. Like, basically, you know, she loves the Legion and she loves the veterans.
Yeah.
And wherever we, like, honestly, there's still poppies in our vehicle from last year.
Oh, yeah,
because
mine
she has
stays.
so many just going around. And
It's you pay homage to the people that went before.
Oh,
you.
man.
Grandpa and Grandma. Grandma was a war bride. Grandpa was a World War II vet.
Grandma's still alive?
Grandma passed away a few years back. Lily, I'm sure if you met her, she talked more than I did.
Yeah. You know, there's they did some. One of my buddies, Lanny, his dad and a bunch of his family, they did some kind of an honoring thing at North Battleford here about less than a month ago. Did you?
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, they've been just really getting on honoring the veterans, which
as we should.
There isn't much more of why we're here to honor than our veterans, man. 100%. I'll tell you.
There's a tribute to war brides going up in Regina. I think.
Yeah, and I mean there isn't very many of them left. I would bet that there's into the tens now, I would guess, of actual World War II.
Yeah.
Grandma used to go with Grandpa to the War Bride Convention in Regina, Saskatoon, Calgary. They were all over. It was awesome. She looked forward to those. I think they were sometimes biannually, but as they all got older, it got annually, and then they probably should have done it by the month in the end because people were passing away quickly, right? But pretty cool story. I went to Pier 21 actually this summer, printed off her ledger of the day she showed up, have all that stuff. You can go to the Pier 21 museum and you can get where your family started from, the ship that she sailed on, how long she was there, and where she was headed to. So our land description is on that ledger that she was going to Sergeant H.G. Noble. So that was
That is
was
cool.
who she was
That
in
is
custody
awesome.
of
Cool,
in Canada. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
By the way, tomorrow is our Remembrance Day show.
Oh,
so
good
we'll
for
be
you
at the
guys.
Legion.
It's awesome.
We'll be at the Legion tomorrow.
Sorry, we're kind of off.
No,
topic,
it
but
isn't
it's
on
a-
off, but
it's that time of year.
It's that time of year, and I
super-
wanted to
yeah,
comment on that. And you know what? The reason why, let's go as deep as it is. The reason why we are where we are and have fossil fuels and can do our oil and gas industry is because of the people that helped us get
Yeah,
there and
and
protect
He's wearing
us. And,
camo though, so I mean,
He's wearing camo, so
He's
it's kinda-
he's pinned.
Yeah.
homage in his own way.
hey,
Yeah.
thank you, Lee, for So I'm actually dressed even more
Yeah,
for Remembrance
yeah,
Day
yeah.
because you guys just have a little tiny poppy. I'm actually clothed from the top.
Yeah.
Just-
Not letting it fly on that.
no, not gonna let it fly.
We left off at Viro Tank. I'm curious about that product. And you said it sells itself. What is the product without getting too technical?
Well, we kind of touched on the setup of the 400 barrels and the 1,000 barrels and the tanks that we see now. Everywhere that we drive, we see essentially our skyline is cluttered with black tanks poking up 34 feet in the air.
Yeah.
The Viro tank is a self-contained horizontal 2-tank system. The actual guidelines say that you have to have, for containment, that you need to have 100% of the first tank in your system and the displacement of all other tanks inside of your containment. So that's why we see these 1,000-barrel tanks standing up, and then they have this long corrugated steel wall around them and then a second tank beside it in it. So essentially, JTL patented the containment law, which is pretty cool that they were able to do it, and now we own the patents because of JTL's demise, but that's a whole nother story for another day. The tank itself is 2 400-barrel tanks butted together inside of the containment. They are 2 separate tanks. They have their own end wall. There's no weir in between. There's a 6-inch crossover that allows the production to flow from the production tank into the sales tank. So it creates kind of like that dead zone that we talk about in chemical treating, that we have that spot for the quiet time for the product to separate. We take the oil off the top just by gravity crossover and the water off the bottom by trucking means. So we have a low point drain to truck the fluid and sand off the bottom of the tanks if need be. And then the oil itself crosses over into the sales tank and it can polish there. And heavy oil, we have both tanks have a heater front and back in the tanks, just to help with coalescing, to help with demulsification if we're adding demulsifiers to the system, all of those things. So essentially it's a horizontal atmospheric treater. It's not pressurized, it's the same, it has the same
It solved a big problem.
Exactly. What it did was help the producer that had to set up, they used to have a temporary tank status in Saskatchewan and Alberta, where if a producer was going to tie the tank into a facility, to an underground facility, they didn't have to put containment up. What happened was the board started driving around and they were finding these tanks on these systems that were 12 and 13 years old and never had a berm built around them, but they were a temporary tank. So then they just went, well, we can't trust you guys to police yourselves, so now every tank that's landed on location either has to be a double wall tank or have its containment. So we helped out the guys.
Lee,
that are
explain
moving
that a
tanks.
little bit for us. Well, when you talk about a berm, like that's a word that we haven't brought up, I don't
Right,
think ever.
yeah, yeah.
And basically, you know it better than I do. A berm is basically either you put a segment of steel, I call them steel Lego kit, around the base of your tank or around the area of your tank, or they do it with dirt, so that if the tank ever spills, it's supposed to be enough in there to contain everything in there if the tank fully loaded
Right.
or whatever,
So
that it didn't cause any environmental issues, right?
Exactly, yeah. So the tankage itself has to be contained, one of the tanks in the system. For them to have a failure of both tanks is probably catastrophic, so
Yeah.
they knew that if they put, your containment had to hold all of the product that's being produced into it, containments would be huge. Farmers
Yeah.
would have to give up too much land.
Yeah.
So they had to have a trade-off, and that's what the trade-off is that it contains 100% of the first tank in the system, and then the displacement. A lot of guys say, and 10% of each tank that you add in, kind of works out mathematically but it's really the displacement.
So I learned something there, because I thought it had to be 100% of any tank on location,
No.
but just the first one.
No, the first one, yeah.
Because the
So-
chances of both going are probably almost,
Yeah, if they are both going, it's catastrophic and there's no amount of containment anywhere because it's a major explosion, or it's, you know, it's something that was not controlled that has caused it. So that's what the beauty of our tank is that it shows up. The process of setting up a well, if you have to build containment, truck your tanks there, they get put off to the side of the location. A picker truck comes back, a large picker truck, a man basket, all these things. They come and they grab this tank and they swing it in. So now you have this safety program that has to be looked after. You have to have a whole meeting about, we're going to be lifting, we're going to do overhead work. Today we're putting on ladders, we're doing all these things 34 feet in the air. We have to have lanyards, we have to have, our tank shows up. It's 13 feet off the ground. Our ladder is already built onto the tank, it trucked down the road that way. The platform for our valve stands, for our valve boxes for the truckers, are folded up and they're on the containment. It folds down, you go up a ladder, 6 steps, put up a hand railing for the platform up top, and it's done. There's safety lugs up top. You can wear your if you're going to be working up on top of the tank, there's safety lugs to tie off on top. And I have heard that if you slide off the side of the tank down into the containment, you don't really get hurt that bad.
I've heard.
So
how big are your tanks, Lee?
Two sizes. They're 800 barrel, so it's 2 400 barrel compartments, or 1200 barrel, so 2
Oh,
600
they're not
barrel
tiny
compartments.
then.
No, the footprint of these tanks is 16 feet wide, 50 feet long on the 800 barrel, and 18 feet wide and just under 60 feet long on the.
Do you get the
1200
oil
barrel.
companies trucking them out, or do you have a trucking company you like
We
to
don't-
use?
Yeah,
or-
in town here, there's a couple of different guys. It's usually customer driven. They're going to have their, with safety programs nowadays and all the comply works and everything else, all these companies have to have their programs to be on site. So typically we go with who they do. But if I was to pick between the two in town, it's going to be Brighton or T-Bar One is the two companies that we use the most here in Lloydminster. And then
Nice little plug.
yeah, exactly. And in the Kindersley area, TKC Oil Field and Picker.
Okay, there you
they're
go.
the
For
guys.
all your needs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, call
Just
Troy.
send us some Tim Hortons cards or something.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you.
Thanks, Troy. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Mike.
Lee, I'm curious, like you saw these tanks and you went, those could be used for this, right?
Yeah,
away.
immediately.
What were they originally meant for?
Well, they were meant as storage tanks. They were meant to make it easier to start to store your oil. But if you drill a well and you drop this tank on location, it cuts the setup time down, well, by a day and a half, right? Like, it's not like it's we have to have all this equipment. We have a winch tractor and 2 pilot trucks deliver our tank to site. An operator can put 2 pieces of lath in the ground, and our trucker can drop it on the ground and drive away. The setup crew, all the valves are installed on the tanks when it shows up. The gauge systems are all there. We talked about the ladder and the hand railings. They're literally on there. We just stand them up and bolt them into place. Thief hatches are installed. Everything shows up. All they have to do is bolt on the manway to ensure that it's done properly, and they can put it into service. There's 8 bolts to bolt to the side of the tank.
So why do you think there's an advantage? Like you go, like just, we're going to use Lee's Viro Rentals. There's what a tank, kind of pretty close to what a normal tank
Exactly,
looks
yeah.
like, with except a spout coming out the side.
Yeah.
You guys drop them vertically.
Yeah.
And of course, way easier to handle on location, all of that good stuff. So instead of going this way, you chose to go this way for that reason? Just
Yeah,
because
for
of
that,
the ease
well,
and the fall arrest and guys
moving-
not falling
and
off?
moving them up and down the road, because
Right.
now we're moving a 12-foot circle as opposed to a 15-foot 6,
We're worried about
34-foot
power lines, all
long,
kinds of
right? We're so much shorter and so much lower to truck down the road. The other thing about that, when you have a column, that's the surface area of retention for the coalescing section.
Of
in
the
your
centrifugal force of the
No.
gravitational pull of the earth. Yes, I get
Exactly.
you. No, just
Okay,
kidding.
so we have in oil and gas, we always talk about contact time. So if that's your surface area in a cylinder,
Now listen up, Kurt.
yeah.
Listen up here.
when
He's
we lay
talking
this on our
about some
side, now it's a
physics here.
rectangle. So now the oil-water interface, where we have demulsifiers and heat and all those things, and we need to make sand and water fall out of our crude. Now we have a larger surface area for water to come together and fall through. It's not stuck together in such a small area, it's opened up into a larger
Did you
area.
learn that at Lakeland College?
I did, actually,
Okay,
from
cool.
Howard Geyer. He's no longer with us. He was the man that started Universal way back when. He's a very, very smart man. He taught us a lot about, well, he's the guy that built the first pressure vessel.
So Howard Geyer,
Howard Geyer.
Len Brower, not Len Brower I'm thinking of. It was a Brower that was also one of the founders.
Yeah, I don't know how the whole story went.
Not Len,
I just know that in the end, I think Caverner patented Howard's idea, but we shouldn't say that.
But Brower was one of the head guys at Universal for years as well.
Yeah, for years, yeah. And I
Can't think of his
didn't,
first
it
name.
was so long before my time.
Yeah.
I didn't know Howard then, but I knew him when he taught me in school. And by then he was a grumpier old man that liked me because I worked hard, and he and his wife knew my grandmother.
So if you want to get really technical, of my very first job in the oil patch was welding tanks at Universal.
100%, I bet.
Pouring the glue and 7018 rod or something, I think they called it. And I just went around the base, and the more better welders did the up top.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we filled it with air, and we went around with the ivory dish soap and squirted all the seams. And if they bubbled, we had to go and fix them. So that was my first job in the oil patch.
There's a lot of people that worked at Universal that was their first job. There's a lot of people that own businesses now because of Universal. There's a lot of the innovation that any of us have or started with, or ideas. That company was probably one of the first to spawn ideas. I think Howard didn't patent the Venturi system for our gun that we use for mixing our air and natural gas to burn the burners, or propane.
Yeah.
That was his idea back in the 70s. He built that.
Yeah, and we've got, there's a few companies out there that do all the burners now.
Just a few, and all of the things that we have for innovation in Lloydminster spawned from guys like that yourself and all of your competitors and everybody else that has a good idea that ran with it, right? So we can't take credit for making the Viro tank, but we can take credit for ensuring that it's still alive, taking it to Texas, taking it to people down there to try and share with them what we think it can do. A lot of the production down there is so much higher production daily at the start than what we have.
What do you mean higher?
It's just the wells down there come on crazy amounts of fluid. Like we might get 60 cubes a day. Down there, they're talking like 1900 cubes a day, some of the wells that they bring on. So our little tank isn't really suited for that, but we are suited for some of the servicing, some of the treating of the oil, some of the facilities where they're maybe having to deal with skim, where they're doing a lot of the oil-based muds now. I've had guys talk to me about that they'd like to set up the cleaning plant that looks after the oil-based mud. Well, they want to use our tanks to store it. They're contained, they're looked after, they don't have to worry about setting up this huge facility and just buy our tank. And
it doesn't all have to be about oil and gas that your stuff you're storing in. Whatever you guys need to do on location to store your
100%.
stuff.
The city of Midland is looking at possibly using some of our equipment
You
as well.
said that right too. Yeah. I got corrected down there. Hey, we're staying in Midland.
No, it's Midland.
No, it's Midland.
It's Midland.
You can't say it that way. You can't say Lloydminster. You have to say Lloydminster.
I try not to say a lot because down south, if there is any of my friends from down in the States listening, you got to say because that sounds a lot smarter than saying A at the end of your sentence.
And also,
I'll take it for you.
And Lee and I did manage to frequent, because I met Lee down there, and it was the reason why we've got him on the show, because he's been around here, but we were down for the Odessa Oil Show, and I want you to elaborate a little bit more on what you felt the vibe in that was. But I still say we have the best Alberta beef and the beef in the world, but we do not touch Texas for barbecue.
No.
And I'm not going to lie, I did move up a weight class there for at least a week with all the different barbecuing that was down there, and it was awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty. The food down there is pretty awesome.
Well, what's it been like going into the States?
Well, if we can start that story where it started for us, we hauled a tank down to Midland, Odessa area in 2020. January 2020, this snowy day, this tank takes off with these, well, I can't call them anything else other than just crazy South Texan Mexican guys. And they have no clue what they're heading into. They have no idea what they've gotten themselves into. And they head south in the snow. They head south in the... They've never even seen snow. I told them to make sure that they bring diesel conditioner to make sure their trucks will start when they're up here sitting in Kindersley overnight. So, They had no idea what they were getting themselves into. And they drug this thing down to Texas for us, and we showed a few manufacturers and a couple oil guys, and we were pumped right up. We had POs for a dozen. We were going to rent out 6, and I was excited, and Jack was excited, and Willie was excited. We had things cooking. We were giving her, and we're rolling along, and we meet this character that builds our tanks today still, and his name's Robbie Waters from Warrior Tank Manufacturing.
I met him, did I not?
You did, yeah. You met Robbie. Robbie's a great dude.
Yeah, he's a nice fellow.
Good friend now too. He's not just a business. He's essentially one of our business partners because he's looked after us so well.
I felt the vibe was the same. I tell everybody when we were down in Midland that we are the Midland of Alberta,
100%.
and everybody got that same vibe. And the guys down there were really nice.
Yep.
You know, everything was y'all and how y'all doing.
Yep.
But they were so.
sister city. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and Sir and Ma'am, they're still Sir and Ma'am. They open the door for you. They help you out. It's a community similar to ours. Same type of guys, same type of people. But
So
anyway,
you're humming along, and I have a feeling something's coming here.
Something's coming. 2020. You know, we're rolling along. We tell Robbie that we'd like to build a half a dozen tanks. We still have that tank down there. People are looking. We have people giving us a hand just with marketing and getting the sales done. So we've got them hired. We've spent a lot of money. Now we're on the hook for another $300,000-$400,000 to build some more tanks. And then I don't know if you guys remember, but that pandemic thingy, it cruised along. We won't get into that at all because we all have our own opinions on that. But we won't broach those today.
Okay.
But it had its results.
It had its results, good and bad, whatever that may be, right? So essentially our business plan has been set back to today. We're back to where we went to the Odessa Oil Show to feel out whether or not we should keep the tanks there or truck them back here to Canada and put them to work. And we're going to keep them there.
That was the feeling. That was the.
Yeah, we've got some decent chances to get them out. I have a customer now that actually modified one of our Viro tanks to suit his own operation, his own process. That's the thing. This little tank spurs people to think about how to change. And it isn't very technical. It's very simple. It's just a tank with a hole in each end, place for a truck to pull fluid out, place for oil and water to separate and cross. It's not technical. It's just the same as all the other tanks, but it's flipped on its side. And people get scared or people embrace it. And the people that are embracing it are seeing it in a different light. We have our preconceived notion of what we think that, what we would use it for here in Canada. These guys see it in a whole different light. There's so many different things that they're thinking about that they could use it for. So we just go with it. They're going to take it out to South Texas, down by Fort Stockton. They're going to put it to work. I'm going to go down and operate it with them because that's my background. If Jack can come along too, he's a great person to have along too because he's an absolute process mind. And we'll figure it out. We'll operate the tank that we have designed. We'll fix it, and then we'll bring it commercial for this guy. And he's got, 10, 11 wells coming in his future that hopefully we'll prove the theory with this one and then build a few more for him as we go. And that's all it takes is just that little kick in the pants to get it going, and then it's good. And then our return on investment comes back from 3 years ago.
And U.S. money too, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, we probably won't ever bring that money back to Canada. I think that it'll stay in the U.S. and it'll just continue to do what it does. Yeah. It's they're related companies. The ownership group is the same, but they're two entirely separate entities.
Yeah, you got to operate what you do in the U.S. to what you operate in Canada. But I've got some video we should probably play at one time where, we think that our acre spacings around here are so, we're pincushion.
Yeah.
You go to Texas and they're getting even tighter, pump jack here, pump jack here, pump jack here, pump jack here, pump jack here. And so what I learned down there was what you were just talking about, Lee. These wells come on so powerful.
Yeah.
They come on so powerful that lots of times there's no lift on them. But they put a pump jack there anyways as capital cost on the well, even though they're not using it. And then the wells get, they produce just flow really strong for a while, and then they start to come down.
Yeah.
And so rather than have to wait for that to happen, the pump jack's already there. They put a artificial lift pump in there and up and down pump jack pump in there, and then they stroke these things for years and years and years at lower production, but they still produce.
So that's where we're coming in now, is on those aged wells.
Right.
Where we have guys that are going back in. Some of those wells were shut in. It's the same thing here. The same function of the majors down there is the same around here. Once a well gets to a certain lifespan, it isn't economical for the big guys to chase people out there to go do it. But for us three to buy 25 wells and operate them, we can make a go of it because we don't have the overhead that they have. We can operate on 2 or 3 cubes a day per well.
Sounds like a familiar story we've heard.
It is. It's happened so many times, and then people will bring that oil field back on, stimulate it back, get it back to where the production's doubled because they have people that care about it and they're looking after it, and it's their baby. So now the production's good. It gets bought back up by Husky or gets bought, or Cenovus now, or whoever, right? So, and that's what's going to happen in Texas. They're going to figure out a way like we did up here. They're going to revitalize their areas. They're going to go back in these multi-lats that we're talking about. There's drill bits out there now that talk to the computer, and they're weighted such that they can drill a lateral, pull out, not even pull out all the way, weight that drill bit, turn a 15-degree corner and drill that lat with that same drill bit. And they get like 6-7 runs out of that drill bit now that we used to get 2 or 3 runs out of before we were changing it out. And these things are Wi-Fi. They talk back to the system. They're live. There's an app on your phone that you can keep track of what's going on. Like, it's absolutely crazy. So when we talk about where we've come from to where we are, we're just starting. We're just scratching the surface. If we want to progress to be better humans to the earth, the only way we get there is by making sure that we take the time with the fossil earth, or with the fossil fuels, to look after the earth. We produce it, and then we innovate, and we do it better, right?
Is that the biggest change you've seen?
Oh, for sure. Like, I mean, coming from when we were on the rig floor to, we're measuring with tape measures to whatever else, to now they're doing it, with ultrasonic or with.
When you can Wi-Fi something down the hole,
exactly.
Because I always think you're not going to get a connection down there, but
so you don't have to forget if you counted all the pipe on the run on the trailer or tallied them all. Like we had. Well, there's guys that tally books, right?
We did. When I ran tools for years, you had to tally, and you could be out of joint, and you're out of joint, and you forget that was supposed to be a part of the tally, and stuff is in the wrong spot. Now they can electronically measure everything.
Know where we are.
And Lee, there must be some pride in knowing that you've changed.
Well,
you've changed this for a lot of people too.
Yeah, and
you yourself have changed the industry.
I don't know if I want to say that, but we were just lucky that we walked into something that we were able to help grow, that we were able to help be a part of. And I guess I would say, as the Viro tank goes, there are other guys that rent them out. We're by far the largest. And I've had a hand in 95% of the Viro tanks that are out in the world. They've been I either sold them, I either talked to the person that bought them off someone else, or they went through our rental company as a rental purchase or a direct sale to the customer. And
that's a good feeling, Lee.
It is. It's pretty cool. And I mean, like I said, our network, the network that I met in Vermilion when I was going to school for farming, I've sold tanks to guys that were working for companies that were from it. So everything ties together, right, from day one to today.
Who are some of the people that you would like to give a shout out to in your career that you said those were some highlights in my life?
They helped, they mentored.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys that were you thought, hey man, if it wasn't for this guy or these guys really taught me some stuff to where I am now.
There's a character that there's a guy that I worked with at Nalco. My very first day, I went down. I met this guy named Dan Byers, and he actually played for the Charlestown Chiefs. He was an AHL guy. And the actual, the van from Slapshot.
Yeah,
Chiefs,
exactly.
He played for that team. He was a defenseman.
So when you met him, was his glasses taped?
Well, they were.
And did he have any false teeth?
Oh, he had some jigsaw teeth for sure at one point. He said it's always the same story. He said I should have been in the NHL, but there was this asshole that just wouldn't retire, and this is the Islanders farm team at that time, right? He just wouldn't retire. That frickin' Dennis Potvin, he just wouldn't quit. And this is his story. Like he was a chief because he couldn't get past Potvin wouldn't retire, right? So he was he'd give me my chance in the chemical industry, and then he had a good friend from the U.S. that actually helped me get my green card and all that stuff for down there.
Nice.
His name is Bill Dudley, and that guy, he's a prince. He's absolutely showed me how to parlay a sale, how to let people learn what you know and then sit back and learn what they know. And in the chemical world, they have a sales platform called the Ben Duffy Sales Platform, and it's the counselor salesperson. So essentially, you need to learn how to listen, which I'm not always that great at. I talk too much.
Jeez,
and then
that sounds familiar.
Exactly. So that
Comment
that
below if you think
actually
Tracy talks too much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We'll edit that out.
system actually has helped me out through life now. It was the basis of being a better salesperson, right?
Yeah.
Our Prime Minister could take a lesson in listening.
Yeah.
That's what I see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
those two
guys, and then locally around here, Tracy likes to think, but I mean, there is a guy like Ed Hardy. I go for coffee with him. He's a good old cat. He's worked hard. Had some companies that did really well here in town and are still kicking around. And then my business partner Jack, just having him, he's a calming presence in the background. Good family man, good kids.
Yeah.
Loves my daughter like one of his, like I love his kids. So yeah, that's
Hanging around with some good people.
exactly. So I'm lucky that those guys that they've had my back over the years. So yeah, it's good. It's those would be kind of some of the people that influenced work ethic, influenced ideas on what sales could be, and then with Jack, just influence and bringing kind of the calm in the background for the business for me. Like I get hyped right up, tell him the story, then he's hyped right up, and then we bring it back and let it sit for a while, and then we calm down and see where we're going to head. And we probably made a mistake going to the U.S. in 2020, but how did we know that?
Yeah.
Hindsight is absolutely, like, we should have seen that there was something coming, but not everybody did.
I've got the biggest song in the world. It's going to be bigger than any Garth Brooks song or George Strait song. I've got to write it.
Right.
So you heard it here on the air again, but it's the biggest country song ever. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%.
And I think it's going to be huge.
And
Went down to the U.S. and with my viral tank seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Who could have seen that coming?
Yeah, exactly. So we reset and roll with the punches. We're good.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty happy with where we sit right now. It took me to be in 40 years old to figure out where I fit in and where I wanted to be. And now I think I'm there. For now, I think I'm there. For the next however long it takes me to get this to where I can retire or whatever that is.
What do you see in the oil field right now? You sense some positivity, sense some hesitation. What's going on?
Well, I don't know what the world influence is going to be in Canada. But if you take the world influence out of Canada, right now we're in an environment where our government hates us. Our provinces are treading water, just trying to hold back the silly that's coming down the pike. Our environment or energy minister is chasing away investment. Our product is discounted $25 off of the world average. Yet somehow Lloydminster still figures out how to get it done.
Yeah.
And Western Canada figures out how to get it done. Even if we are the redheaded stepchild of Canada and they hate us, but they love our money.
The redheaded stepchild of Canada. That's a new one for me.
We don't have a lot of support, but we have a lot of really, really good people with intestinal fortitude. I wish that our government would learn some situational awareness and know what butters their bread, but we're not going to teach them that. We're just not. So for me, there's the background for me that I know that we'll just keep going because we all just keep trying and we just keep working. And that's everybody within this industry. No matter how hard we get beat down, whatever the regulation might be, whatever new thing that comes down the pike, we figure out how to make money. The bigs figure out how to do it. But at some point, where's the payoff? Where do we get to that breaking point of where there's no return. Who's going to own it? Is the Canadian government going to nationalize our oil and gas? They already bought a big pipeline that's dragging its feet getting done. Are they going to nationalize that because they chased away all investment and now they're going to be the champions and the heroes that are going to come in and save the oil industry? And now if the Liberal Party does it, it's green and now all of a sudden it's ready to go? I don't know. I don't have that. So I don't have that answer to that. But right now, I think there's a lot of positive stuff going on in the oil field. We've figured out how to make money inside of the worst climate in the world to operate.
So you guys are both down in Texas. It must be a completely different feeling. You must, like, you go. Do you go to the Odessa Oil Show and feel completely different? Like these people don't have the weight of a country pressing down on them.
No, they have critical mass. They are their own country essentially. They have, better part of 40 million people that are documented, and I don't know how many people are there that are working and spending money that aren't part of their population but are there. The welding shops, the trucking companies, the hotshot services, the tool companies, the dealerships.
They're just booming.
They're just booming, man. They're massive. But it is with a little bit of trepidation there too.
Yeah,
like when you talk to the business owners, they're not going to build the brand new shop. They're going to go find the old one and make it work. That's what my manufacturer does.
Why is that, you think?
Because they don't want to get hung.
They don't trust.
They don't trust Biden.
They just don't trust the
boom
government.
and bust, right? They
Yeah.
know for every boom there's got to be a bust, and this next bust will be big because, it's going to be like a correction of a market. It'll be probably like 08, 09 all over again at some point in our future. We know it's coming. It always does, right?
But I would say that this is, in my 45 years of doing this, this is the longest when 2015 hit, and we're still trying to recover from that, and here we are in 2023. It's still the longest run.
Do you guys don't think we're out of it yet?
I think we're getting out of it, but I think that the longest I've ever seen in my time, and Lee's been around a long time as well, you do about a 5-year, 6-year cycle, and then you'd have a 1 year and you were back up again.
Yep.
So this has been going on for 5+ years.
We're on an upward swing, but it's been a 5-year slow
upward swing. Back when we used to get these cycles, I've probably been through 6 or 7 of them now. It used to be where you would be up and then you'd come down and then you were back up again. Yep. This one's kind of come down, 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 and then it's like, hey, we're supposed to be coming up here. And everybody thought by 2017, 18, it would change. It didn't. Then 19 hit. And then all of a sudden, COVID's coming on. Well, that just added to the time that we were already away, that now it just added. So in my opinion, it feels like a minimum 6 or 7 year cycle when it should have only been 18 months.
They feel the same way in Texas?
The investment
investment
in Texas in the smaller intermediate guys isn't rushing back like it has. It's not as easy to access cash. It's not as easy to, they can always find people. It's not that easy to find qualified people who do what they want to do, because a lot of them have moved on to other areas too, just like in Canada, right? But yeah, the money isn't as easily accessible. And in Canada, I don't know if it's almost non-existent to get financing for a small startup oil company, unless you're going to pay 25% interest, like literal credit card interest for getting your money. And there just isn't. If the return on investment was there, if you could get 25% money and make 75% return on investment, then the people would be doing it. But it isn't there because we're making $46 a barrel on our oil, right? So,
but people, what I find is that, that saying is people forget, and that could be about the political side. But and I know you'll agree with me, Lee, oil and gas is going to be around for a long time, and oil and gas, people are coming back to that investment again because they're seeing the rise of it, and the guys that, I don't know how else to word that. It's like, well, I used to really like that, but now I don't because I'm over here. Hold on a second. The reason why you used to like it was because it did really well for you.
Yeah.
And oil and gas has made people around the world billions and billions of dollars, and then you go, well, it's not as good anymore, so I'm going to go over here, maybe in IT, and maybe go in here. All of a sudden, this starts coming back again. I promise you, the cows will come back to the pasture again because oil and gas is just such a
it's the only
viable thing that creates goodness and things on the earth, and has also been a good investment for people.
Yeah, it's the only thing that finances all the crazy ideas.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that's stable enough to finance them.
Yeah.
So eventually, everybody will have to come back to it. It's just who's going to own it at that point.
Yeah.
What's the climate going to be? It's all those things, right? So I'm optimistic of where we sit and what we're doing, but that's because we kind of control it ourselves. We don't have a whole bunch of debt. We don't have a whole bunch of outside influences where if you have a bunch of investors or that kind of stuff, then it gets muddied. We're pretty clear on what we want to do. We have a coffee and figure it out, and then we go. And then if things change, well, then we have another coffee and change our direction again, whatever we have to do. You were asking, you wanted to ask how many employees we had. Well, we don't have any employees. We have a product that we sell to good customers or good clients, and like I said, that the product itself is good, so it makes it pretty easy to market it. So,
Well, when you guys started talking about having trouble finding employees, I figured we'd turn the corner. Not so much.
No, not so much. The qualified people, like guys, Tracy's and my age, say that should be the guys that are going to come be the foreman or look after the stuff. They're not there anymore. We had a lot of Eastern Canada workers out here that I don't think are here anymore. I think they've gone home, and I think they're doing other things. We have a lot of people that have retired. We have a lot of people that are aged out. We've had a lot of, lately, I don't know if you've noticed, we've had a lot of deaths, a lot of people passing away. It's crazy. We're lacking critical knowledge in our oil field in Lloydminster now. We have a good base, but we don't have the next generation coming into it.
Well, because they were discouraged. They
have been discouraged.
They listen to their government, and their government
Exactly,
discourages from going into it.
I'm proud to say that I have a daughter. She's 19 years old, and she's right now at NAIT taking chemical technology.
Nice.
She will be an oil field chemist. That will be her vocation. She may have to go to Sugar Land, Texas to do it. She might not be able to stay in Canada, but she's going to be a part of it.
What a shame that would be.
It is a shame. And I mean, every sector we're losing good, young, smart people. And she's a hard worker. She's like her mom. She's dedicated. She's a student athlete. So, I mean, she's going to do good wherever she goes because she works hard. So, and we're proud of that. Lana and I are proud that she's doing what she's doing. So it's pretty cool.
You don't hear that often. I have two daughters, and I'm very proud of them. They went in a different direction, but they're very supportive of what I do. But we're going to wrap up the show. Been a tremendous time talking with you, Lee. Love to maybe have you on a panel again one day, because we didn't get into your political side of things and extend out on that.
We'll stay away from that.
Because Adam Waterman also said you could go down that road with Lee. He would give you a good talk, and we're going to go for lunch after with him. So the other note is that I always say this, even on the show: snow melts, Lloydminster, and oil prices always rise. Yep. So we're going to come back to that. We're going to see that cycle come back. We're going to see that the use of fossil fuels is just going to be there forever. It will never be in our children's lifetime. And really appreciate you being on the show.
Appreciate it too. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you so much.
Good to catch up with you again.
Yeah.
I know it took to Odessa to get it done.
Yeah, that's okay.
Thanks. Nice to see you again too.
And we thank you for joining us as well. I'll be back with you tomorrow on Live with Kurt Price. We're going to talk about Remembrance Day.